Okay, so your reading for today, guys, is a continuation of Fantastic, which you started reading yesterday. Before we begin, though, I want you to think back to the 2 chapters that you read yesterday. Just refresh in your head, where is the story set? Which characters were you introduced to? Okay, what were each of the characters' characteristics? So which characters did you like? Which characters didn't you like? Okay, think forward and make a prediction about what you think might happen in the story today. Okay, so we're going to be having a look at chapter 3 and 4 today, and again they're quite short chapters, and they've got some quite nice pictures in as well for you to have a little look at. This is about your understanding of the text, so your comprehension but also your fluency. If you can, when every new page comes on, pause the video, try and read it yourself. Okay. Chapter 3, The Shooting. Well, my darling, said Mr. Fox, what shall it be tonight? I think we'll have duck tonight, said Mrs. Fox. Bring us 2 fat ducks, if you please. 1 for you and me, and 1 for the children. Ducks it shall be, said Mr. Fox. Bunce is best. Now do be careful, said Mrs. Fox. My darling, said Mr. Fox, I can smell those goons a mile away. I can even smell one from the other. Boggis gives off a filthy stink of rotten chicken skins. Bunce reeks of goose liver. And as for Bean, the fumes of apple cider hang around him like poisonous gases. Yes, but just don't get careless, said Mrs. Fox. You know they'll be waiting for you, all 3 of them. Don't you worry about me, said Mr. Fox. I'll see you later. But Mr. Fox would not have been quite so cocky if he had known exactly where the 3 farmers were waiting at that moment. They were just outside the entrance to the hole, each one crouching behind a tree with his gun loaded. And what is more, they had chosen their positions very carefully, making sure that the wind was not blowing from them towards the fox's hole. In fact, it was blowing in the opposite direction. There was no chance of them being smelled out. Mr. Fox crept up the dark tunnel to the mouth of his hole. He poked his long, handsome face into the air and sniffed once. He moved an inch or 2 forward and stopped. He sniffed again. He was always especially careful when coming out from his hole. He inched forward a little more. The front half of his body was now in the open. His black nose twitched from side to side, sniffing and sniffing for the scent of danger. He found none, and he was just about to go trotting forward into the wood when he heard, or thought he heard, a tiny noise, a soft rustling sound, as though someone had moved a foot ever so gently through a patch of dry leaves. Mr. Fox flattened his body against the ground and lay very still, his ears pricked. He waited a long time, but he heard nothing more. It must have been a field mouse, he told himself, or some other small animal. He crept a little further out of the hole, then further still. He was almost right out in the open now. He took a last careful look around. The wood was murky and very still. Somewhere in the sky the moon was shining. Just then his sharp night eyes caught a glint of something bright behind a tree not far away. It was a small silver speck of moonlight shining on a polished surface. Mr. Fox lay still, watching it. What on earth was it? Now it was moving. It was coming up and up. Great heavens! It was the barrel of a gun. Quick as a whip, Mr. Fox jumped back into his hole, and at that same instant the entire wood seemed to explode around him. Bang, 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 bang! The smoke from the 3 guns floated upwards in the night air. Boggis and Bunce and Bean came out from behind their trees and walked towards the hole. Did we get him? Said Bean. One of them shone a flashlight on the hole, and there on the ground, in the circle of light, half in and half out of the hole, lay the poor, tattered, blood-stained remains of a fox's tail. Bean picked it up. We got the tail, but we missed the fox, he said, tossing the Dang and blast, said Boris. We shot too late. We should have let fly the moment he poked his head out. He won't be poking his head out again in a hurry, Bunce said. Bean pulled a flask from his pocket and took a swig of cider. Then he said, It'll take 3 days at least before he gets hungry enough to come out again. I'm not sitting around here waiting for that. Let's dig him out. Ah, said Boris. Now you're talking sense. We can dig him out in a couple of hours. We know he's there. I reckon there's a whole family of them down that hole, Bunce said. Then we'll have the lot, said Bean. Get the shovels. Chapter 4. The Terrible Shovels. Down in the hole, Mrs. Fox was tenderly licking the stump of Mr. Fox's tail to stop the bleeding. It was the finest tail for miles around, she said between licks. It hurts, said Mr. Fox. I know it does, sweetheart, but it'll soon get better. It will soon grow again, Dad, said one of the small foxes. It will never grow again, said Mr. Fox. I shall be tailless for the rest of my life. He looked very good. There was no food for the foxes that night, and soon the children dozed off. Then Mrs. Fox dozed off, but Mr. Fox couldn't sleep because of the pain in the stump of his tail. Well, he thought, I suppose I'm lucky to be alive at all, and now they've found our hole, we're going to have to move out as soon as possible. We'll never get any peace if we... What was that? He turned his head sharply and listened. The noise he heard now was the most frightening noise a fox can ever hear. The scrape, scrape, scraping of shovels digging into the soil. Wake up, he shouted. They're digging us out. Mrs. Fox was wide awake in 1 second. She sat up, quivering all over. Are you sure that's it? She whispered. I'm positive. Listen. They'll kill my children, cried Mrs. Fox. Never, said Mr. Fox. But darling, they will, sobbed Mrs. Fox. You know they will. Scrunch, scrunch, scrunch went the shovels against their head, above their head. Small stones and bits of earth began falling from the roof of the tunnel. How will they kill us, Mummy? Asked one of the small foxes. His round black eyes were huge with fright. Will there be dogs? He said. Mrs. Fox began to cry. She gathered her 4 children close to her and held them tight. Suddenly there was an especially loud crunch above their heads, and the sharp end of a shovel came right through the ceiling. This awful thing seemed to have an electric effect upon Mr. Fox. He jumped up and shouted, I've got it! Come on! There's not a moment to lose. Why didn't I think of it before? Think of what, Dad? A fox can dig quicker than a man, shouted Mr. Fox, beginning to dig. Nobody in the world can dig as quick as a fox. The soil began to fly out furiously behind Mr. Fox as he started to dig for dear life with his front feet. Mrs. Fox ran forward to help them. So did the 4 children. Go downwards, ordered Mr. Fox. We've got to go deep as we possibly can. The tunnel began to grow longer and longer. It sloped steeply downwards. Deeper and deeper below the surface of the ground it went. The mother and the father and all 4 of the children were digging together. Their front legs were moving so fast you couldn't see them, and gradually the scrunching and scraping of the shovels became fainter and fainter. After about an hour, Mr. Fox stopped digging. Hold it, he said. They all stopped. They turned and looked back up the long tunnel they'd just dug. All was quiet. Phew, said Mr. Fox. I think we've done it. They'll never get as deep as this. Well done, everybody. They all sat down, panting for breath, and Mrs. Fox said to her children, I should like you to know that if it wasn't for your father, we should all be dead by now. Your father is a fantastic fox. Mr. Fox looked at his wife and smiled. He loved her more than ever when she said things like that. Okay, so that's the end of chapter 4. You have got your 5 quick fire round questions. So on page 12, I've given you page numbers today. So page 12, what simile does the author use to describe how Mr. Fox jumped back into his hole? Question 2, what does the word murky mean? Also on page 12. Question 3, at the end of the chapter, on page 14, what do the farmers plan to do to get the foxes? Chapter 4, question 4. Find and copy the short sentence on page 16 which shows that Mrs. Fox is scared when she hears the shovels. And question 5. Why do you think the foxes were panting for breath? And that's on page 19. Here are your sentence stems. You haven't got a sentence stem for question 4 because it's just a find and copy. Okay, find and copy question, you just need to find and copy it. Don't need to put anything else. Pause the video while you have a go. Okay, there are your answers. So the simile the author uses to describe how Mr. Fox jumped back into his hole is as quick as a whip. The word murky means dark or dim, okay, or you could have a similar word which indicates that it was difficult for Mr. Fox to see. At the end of the chapter, the farmers plan to get the foxes by digging down to their home to catch them. The short sentence on page 16, which shows that Mrs. Fox is scared, is she sat up quivering all over. And I think the foxes were panting for breath because they had been digging for so long and they were also scared. For these brain power questions, there is no right or wrong answer. You've got 3 questions. I'll read them to you in a second. Have a go and then we'll look through them together to see if you've got any ideas in your answer. So, question 6 on page 13. Why do you think Roald Dahl uses ellipsis? So that ... What effect does it have on you as the reader? Question 7. What techniques does Roald Dahl use to create an atmosphere of panic and fear? On page 18. And then page 8. Can you summarise what has happened in the story up until this point? Okay, pause while you have a go at answering. Okay, page 13. So this page here on the right with the picture. Why do you think Roald Dahl uses ellipsis? What effect does it have on you as the reader? So let's find the ellipsis that we talk of. There it is. Okay. So for me as the reader, and you probably heard it when I read the story, I used that ellipsis. I think Roald Dahl has used that ellipsis to create suspense. Okay. To build the reader up, okay, and to make them worried about whether or not they've actually caught the fox. So I read it when I was reading it. One of them shone the flashlight on the hole, and there on the ground in the circle of light, half in and half out of the hole, lay the poor tattered bloodstained remains of a fox's tail. So you're building it up. Roald Dahl's building it up, giving us loads of description, half in, half out, tattered, bloodstained. And we're thinking, as the reader, we're thinking, oh my goodness, have they caught the fox? Is the fox dead? And then it's ... a fox's tail. So it's almost like it's building you up. You've got that ellipsis, you find out it's the fox's tail, and then as the reader, you're like, whew, phew, it's not Mr. Fox. Okay, so that is the effect it has on me as the reader. What techniques does Roald Dahl use to create an atmosphere of panic and fear on page 18? So you've got here, page 18, you've got words and vocabulary, word choices like furiously, okay? The word furiously makes us think that everything's moving so fast, okay? Everything's moving fast and that they're panicking. Okay, everything, if you have a look, everything that Mr. Fox is saying, or a lot of the things that Mr. Fox is saying, have got exclamation marks on, okay, which shows that he might be shouting them. We can see here, he's ordering people, so he's panicking, he's giving out orders, he's trying to get people to follow his instructions, okay. Then, if you go down into this paragraph here, after about an hour, Mr. Fox stopped digging. Hold it. Again, another exclamation mark, he said. They all stopped. They turned and looked back up the long tunnel. All was quiet. Phew, said Mr. Fox. All those sentences are quite short, okay? So, short sentences often give us a sense of panic or of fear, and that the authors often do that on purpose to create that feeling for the reader. Okay, so those are some of the answers, some of the ideas you may have in your answer. And then can you summarise what has happened in the story up until this point? That is something that you can do by yourself. Okay, think about the characters that we've met, think about what's happened, who are the good characters, who are the bad characters. Write a little paragraph. If when you finished your work today you want to send over your answers or your summary, it can come to either year 3 at Redbrook Hayes or year 4 at redbrookhayes.staffs.sch.uk. Okay, your teachers would love to see those.
Hi there everyone. Okay, so today we are going to go through the answers for yesterday's questions. I'm going to explain it, the first couple, and then let's see if that's going to mess everything up. I'll explain the first couple, and then what I'll do is just give you the answers. If you got stuck on anything, that's absolutely fine. If you think you need to practice anything, have another little go if you want to. You can always pause this and go backwards or have a look at yesterday's one just to go over, just to see if you can work out the little mistake that you might have made. So for the very first one, I'm just going to move this up slightly. So for our first one then, we had 1/3 of 9. Okay, so our whole amount was 9. I'm just going to draw a little bar model again. Okay, our whole amount, our whole piece, our whole part, altogether we had 9. Now our denominator, okay, is 3. Okay, so when we're looking at our fraction, we've got 3 equal parts altogether. So I need to split this bar into 3 equal parts. Okay, now my whole amount is 9 and we want to find 1/3 of 9. Okay, so we want to see how many, if 9 split into those 3 equal parts, how many is there in one of those 3 equal parts? So I can share my 9 out by going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, so I have got 3 in each to check that they are all equal. Perfect, and 3 at 3 does equal 9. 3 lots of 3 is 9, and we're looking at one of those 3 equal parts. Okay, so 1/3 of 9 should be 3. Okay, so our first one should be 3. Okay, 1/3 of 15, so 15 into 3 equal parts is 5. There's 5 in one of those 3 equal parts. 1/3 of 21 would be 7. 1/4 of 16 is 4. 1/4 of 24 is 6. 1/4 of 20 is 5. Well done if you used your other bars models there to help you with that one. And then these are the ones that I thought would be the easiest. So we've got 1/10 of 30 is 3. 1/10 of 50 is 5, and 1/10 of 40 is 4. Okay, now you may have spotted what the trick is for each of those to find a unit fraction of an amount. Okay, so what we're going to be doing today is we're going to carry on practicing finding unit fractions of amounts, but we're going to be seeing if we can spot the rule or the pattern, and we're going to try using that today, so we don't have to draw bar models every time. If you find that drawing bar models really helped you yesterday, that's absolutely brilliant. Carry on using them if you want to. You might find it starts to get a little bit tricky when we've got lots of numbers. Oh, sorry, not lots of numbers, we've got larger numbers or greater numbers. Okay, so we're looking at finding unit fractions of amounts, but we're going to see if we can find the rule today and use the rule. Okay, so let's just have a little look here. I'm just going to make the screen a bit slightly different size because it doesn't want to do it. There we go. Okay, now I can see everything. So just to check that we've understood what we did yesterday. Now on the left here, I have got 3 different fractions. I've got 1/5, 1/3, and 1/4. Now on the other side, you can see I've got 3 different bar models, and they've all got different amounts, and they've all been split into different parts. Can you work out which bar model goes with which fraction, which bar model is representing which fraction. So think about what we did yesterday. Okay, we had our whole amount and we divided it, we split it, we shared it equally into parts. Okay, and we made the parts, we chose how many equal parts to split it into by using our denominator. Okay, so look at those bar models. How many equal parts are in each? So at the top here, we've got our whole amount is 20. Okay, and it's been split into fives. Okay, but look at how many equal parts it's been split into. Okay, so what's the fraction that's been represented there? So we've got a circle around one of those equal parts, but how many of those equal parts? And then look at the next one here. We've got 30 as our whole amount, and the fraction equals 6, but how many of those equal parts is being shown? So which fraction would that be? Okay, and the last one we've got 18, and that's been split into equal parts as well. Okay, and one of those is circled out of them all. So which fraction goes with which bar model? Okay, so you can pause me for a minute whilst we try and work it out. Okay, and then I'm going to draw the lines on afterwards. Okay, so pause me now so you can have a little go. Okay, so hopefully you have had a go, and I'm going to draw on here and explain which one's which. So for 1/5, okay, so that's talking about 5 equal parts altogether, and we're looking at one of them. So which of these bar models has 5 equal parts altogether, and one of them is circled? It is this one. Okay, so our whole amount is 30. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 equal parts. Okay, 30 shared into 5 divided by 5 equals 6. Okay, 1/3, we've got 3 equal parts and we're looking at one of them. So which of the bar models has 3 equal parts? Well, this one up here has got 1, 2, 3, 4 equal parts, so it can't be that one. If we go to the bottom, we've got 1, 2, 3 equal parts. So 18 has been split into thirds, and in one of those, it is 6. Okay, so 1/3 is this bar model down here, which means, of course, 20 at the top is our whole amount for this fraction, and we've divided 20 into 1, 2, 3, 4 equal parts, which means that 1/4 is being represented in an amount with that bar model there. So hopefully you got those right. If not, watch this bit again. Do you understand now why it's that one? Okay, why it's those ones? All right, so let's have a little go now at seeing if we can work out what the rule is. Okay, so here we're just focusing on that 1/5 one to begin with. We didn't look at any fifths yesterday. So we're going to just have a little focus on this one here. Okay, so we've got our whole amount is 30. Okay, it's been split into, let's just double check, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 equal parts. Why has it been split into 5 equal parts? What's the fraction we're trying to find? Have a little think about it. Okay, so we've got a fraction up here. We're finding 1/5. Why has it been split into 5 equal parts? Hopefully you'll be jumping around saying it's because our denominator is 5. Our denominator tells us how many equal parts there are altogether. If we're looking at fifths, we are going to be sharing our amount into equal groups, 5 equal groups. Okay, so to shorten what we've been doing, okay, to find a fraction of the amount, we divide by the, now this is a little rule that you can remember. Let's see if I can write it neatly with my finger. Denominator. Okay, so to find a fraction of the amount, we divide by the denominator. Okay, so our whole amount was 30. If we're trying to find, let me write it up here, 1/5 of 30, okay, we take our whole amount, which is 30, and we divide by the denominator. Okay, so our denominator is 5, so we divide it by 5. So we are all confident with our 5. So how many 5s go into 30? What do we multiply by 5 to get 30? If you're not sure, if you don't know off the top of your head, count in 5s until you get to 30. Okay, and we should all know that it is 6. Okay, so 30 divided by 5 is 6. So that means then, which is exactly what we have up here. Okay, it's exactly what we've done up there, that 30 divided by 5 is 6. So 30 shared into 6 equal parts is 5. So that means that 1/5 of 30 equals 6. Okay, we're just looking at one of those 5 equal parts. Okay, so let's see if we can have a go here. Now, I've not put the amounts in my equal parts. I want to see if you can have a go on your own first. So our fraction, again, we're just focusing on fifths at the moment. So I've got 1/5 there. Our whole amount is 20. Okay, so we've got 1/5 of 20. Okay, so think about what that equals. So we've said the rule is to find a fraction of the amount, we divide by the denominator. Okay, I'm just going to put D here. Okay, we divide by the denominator. So look at what your denominator is. What are you going to divide by? Okay, so it's 20 divided by what? Then what does that equal? Okay, have a little go on your own first. So pause me and then we'll come back and see if we're correct. Okay, so hopefully you've just had a go at finding 1/5 of 20 and we've realised that we need to divide by the denominator to find the amount we're looking for when we are finding a fraction of an amount. So our whole amount was 20. I've got my 5 equal parts up here, okay, but all we're doing is dividing by 5. Okay, so again, we should be really, really hot on our 5s. So thinking about your multiplication facts, what do we multiply 5 by to get 20? 5, 10, 15, 20. It is 4. Okay, so what you would do up here, if we were still using the bar model, we would just be putting 4 in each of those equal parts, okay? Because I know that 4 is 8. 8 and 8 is 16. That's another 4, 20. Okay, we know that 5 lots of 4 equals 20. Okay, so 1/5 of 20 equals 20 divided by 5, which equals 4. Okay, right, so got one last, I think it's one last, there might be one more, fifth for you to find. Okay, so our whole amount is 40 and we're finding 1/5 of 40. Okay, so you've got here your whole amount. I've got the bar model there. I've got my 5 equal parts, but I want to see if you guys can have a go at doing it on your own using the calculation. So what are we doing with our denominator to find a fraction of the amount? Okay, so 40 is your whole amount. We're finding 1/5 of 40. Okay, so what do we need to do? We divide by the what? Okay, pause me, have a go, and then let's see if you're right. Okay, brilliant. So hopefully you've just had a go at that. Hopefully somewhere in your book you have written 40 divided by, well, our denominator is 5, so 40 divided by 5. And then hopefully you thought, okay, what do I times by 5 to get 40? Which is 8. Okay, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40. That's 8. Okay, so what I would have if I was using my bar model, if I counted out 40, which would have taken quite a long time because I'd have had 8 dots in each of those to get 40. But we can use our multiplication skills and facts that we know. You guys are absolutely smashing TT rock stars, so use those skills that you've got. Okay. Right, so now we've had a go at 5s. I think we're confident with that. Let's just come back to finding thirds. Okay, I've got 27 as my whole amount. What am I going to divide 27 by this time? Am I still going to divide it by 5 or not? Think about what are we dividing by? How many equal parts have I split it into? Why have I split it into that many? Have a little think. Okay, so hopefully you're spotting, because our fraction is different, it's not 1/5 anymore, it's 1/3. Okay, so the denominator tells us how many equal parts. So we're splitting 27 into 3 equal parts. So what is the calculation we're going to do? So if we've got 1 third of 27. Okay, we're going to do, I'm just going to write this one underneath now, 27 divided by our denominator, which is 3. Okay, what do we times 3 by to get 27? Okay, hopefully you're all screaming 9 at me. Okay, it's very nearly 30, so it's one lot of 3 less than 30, which is 9. Okay, so 27 divided by our denominator divided by 3 equals 9, which means 1/3 of 27 equals 9. I've changed my mind to how I'd like to set this out. Before I started like this and then I went into a different way and I've come back to this now. So I'm writing my, I'll just highlight it here for you so you can see. I've written my sort of what I'm finding out here, 1/3 of what equals. Underneath I'm just doing the calculation for it and then putting the answer in at the top as well. Okay. So in my bar model it would look like this. 9, 9, 9. We know that 3 lots of 9 is 27. Okay. Now I've got a really tricky one. Why haven't I got 3 equal parts on my bar model anymore? Why has it changed? I should have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I've got 8. Why have I got 8? And then hopefully you'll be saying, because Miss Cunnington, the denominator is 8. We're looking at 8, we're sharing something to 8 equal parts. Okay. So what would be the calculation we're going to write? Well, you'd be popping in your book 1/8 of 64 equals, and then underneath you can do the calculation for it. Well, 64, now if I'm finding a fraction of an amount, I've got to divide it by my denominator, so I'm dividing it by 8. If you're not sure on your 8s, that's absolutely fine. You can write them out. You might not have a multiplication grid at home, but you can write them out in your book, adding 8 each time. Well, I know that 5/8 is 40, so that means 6/8 is 48, which means 7/8 is 7. I've lost track already. 5/8 is 40, 6/8 is 48, 7/8 is 56, and then 8/8 is 64. Don't know why I always remember that one. 8/8 is 64. So that means 64 divided by 8 equals 8. Okay, so up here then, I'll just finish that one off. 1/8 of 64 is 8. Okay, so remember we are always dividing by the denominator. Okay, so I would have 8 in each of my 8 equal parts. Now for a calculation like this, when we're finding 8ths of an amount, especially a larger amount like 64, it would take a long time to do 8 lots of 8 dots. Okay, and that's when mistakes happen as well. Okay, so it's really useful to have these efficient ways of doing it. Okay, so if you'll do it then, I'd like you to do it in your book. If you could set it out how I did, that will make life a bit easier. So writing 1/8 of whichever number equals, and then underneath just write the division calculation for me. So we've got 1/5 of 15, 1/5 of 25, 1/3 of 21, 1/3 of 36, 1/4 of 24, and 1/8 of 56. So have a go. Don't rush it, do take your time, do the calculations. If you think you need to do the bar model, that's absolutely fine, do that as well, but try and check it with the division calculation as well. So the thing we're looking for here is whether we can use the division as a bit of a shortcut, as an efficient method, okay, because it is quicker to do than the bar model, and it'll be really helpful for our next step in our learning when we look at non-unit fractions. Okay, so pause me whilst you have a go at that, and then when you're ready, join me again and we'll have a little look at the secure it together. Okay, so for your secure it then, I'd like to complete this in your book. You can write the question out if you like. So Gary says, to find 1/3 of 24, he needs to divide 24 into 2 equal parts. Do you agree? Okay, so he's got what he's trying to find 1/3. Okay, got 1/3 there of 24. All right, he thinks you need to divide 24 into 2 equal parts. Do you agree? So I'd like you to explain whether you agree or not. So if you do agree, can you prove why he's right? If you don't agree, can you prove why he is incorrect? Okay, so remember, we learn from mistakes. So we're going to learn from perhaps one of Gary's mistakes here. Why does Gary think maybe it needs to go and divide into 2 equal parts? If it doesn't, what should it go into? And can you please prove it for me? Okay, what answer would he have got if he divided it into 2 equal parts? Or what fraction would he have found if he divided it into 2 equal parts? Okay, you can challenge yourself as much as you want with this question. Think about all the extra ticks you could get with it. Okay, so we'll go over this one at the start of tomorrow's lesson as well. Okay, as well as your do it answers too. Okay, well done, guys. If you've got any problems with that at all, do just give me an email. All right. If you're desperate to see if you've got them right, you can send it to me and I can mark it through the email. That's not a problem. So don't forget that you can email me at, is it going to let me do it?
Hi everybody, welcome to your writing session for today. We're going to start off again like we did yesterday with some sentence doctor. So just like yesterday, we're looking for those punctuation mistakes. So we've got 2 sentences for you. Would you like to come to my party, said Jenny. And the weather was glorious today in Rugeley. And today we are now looking for 5 punctuation mistakes. So we're looking for capital letters, we're looking for full stops, we're going to look for question marks, exclamation marks, maybe apostrophes, perhaps some speech marks. What have I forgotten when I was writing these sentences? What I'd like you to do is pause the video, copy the sentences down into your books and make sure you do them correctly, looking out for those 5 punctuation mistakes that I have made. Pause the video now and have a go. Fantastic, well done. Hopefully you've managed to spot all 5 of those punctuation mistakes. Let's have a little look through them. So there was a clue in this one because it says the words said. So we knew there must be some speech marks missing. So we've got speech marks at the start of our sentence. Would you like to come to my party? And speech marks at the end of that point because they've stopped speaking before it says said Jenny. And we all know that if we put our speech marks around our words, we need some punctuation to make sure all of the words stay inside that speech mark. So in this case, we've got a question, would you like to come to my party? So we need a question mark. So there's 3 pieces of punctuation missing in that first sentence, a speech mark, a question mark, and another speech mark. And that means that there was just one in the following sentence, which was the weather today was glorious today in Rugeley, and that's a capital R that we were missing in the town of Rugeley because it's a proper noun. Hopefully you managed to get all of those correct today. So today's lesson is all about a particular type of poem. So we're going to be learning to write a limerick, and you will have noticed in the Fantastic Mr. Fox books that Roald Dahl uses these little tiny poems all the way through his book to make them a little bit more entertaining. And if you've ever read George's Marvellous Medicine, you might have spotted a poem or 2 in there as well. So the one that we've seen so far is about the farmers, and this is a special type of poem and it's called a limerick. Let's read it through together. Boggis and bunts and bean, one fat, one short, one lean. These horrible crooks, so different in looks, were nonetheless equally mean. So today we're going to be finding out what a limerick is. We're going to be finding out what makes it a particularly special type of poem, and we're going to be having a go at writing some limericks ourselves. So it should be a really fun and a bit of a silly lesson as well today. So first of all, we're going to have a look at some different limericks. So we've already had this one, Boggis, bunts and bean, one short, one fat, one lean. These horrible crooks, so different in looks, were nonetheless equally mean. And now we've got these 3. So when I'm reading them through, what I'd like you to think about is what's the same about these limericks, okay? What makes them a limerick? What do you think the rules of limericks might be from the examples that we've seen? So what sounds the same? Maybe what looks the same? Look at what it sounds like, look at the structures, look at how the rhymes as I'm reading them through, okay? So, there once an old person of Fratton who would go to church with his hat on. If I wake up, he said, with a hat on my head, I will know that it has been sat on. Okay, the next one. I went to the staff room one day for a nice cup of tea during play, but a troll had got in and was making a din, even though he had nothing to say. And then the final one is I once had a blind date with Scylla. I took her to watch Aston Villa. She sang to the crowd and she sang very loud, and that's why they threatened to sub her. Okay, so what I'd like you to do is pause the video for me and have a little look. What do you notice is the same about all of these limericks? And look at the 2 clues on the screen to give you a hand. Come back to me once you've worked out what might be the same. Okay, so did you spot the clues that I'd left you? So the first thing, hopefully, that you'd noticed within these limericks is that they're a bit silly. So Boggis, Bunce and Bean, one short, one fat, one lean. These horrible crooks, so different in looks, were nonetheless equally mean. They're all a bit silly. If you have a look here, we've got ones about Aston Villa, we've got ones about trolls, we've got a person who's going to sleep with his hat on. They're all a bit silly. So hopefully you noticed that that's part of what a limerick's all about. Something else you might have noticed about all of the limericks is they've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All limericks have just 5 lines. They're really short, funny poems. Okay, let's have a look at something else you might have spotted. So hopefully when I was reading those limericks out loud to you, you listened and you understood that actually they all sound quite the same. They've got the same rhythm, the same tempo as you're reading it through. And that's because they've got the same number of syllables in them. So syllables are that different number of sounds. Remember when you used to do syllables perhaps in the reception class and you used to put your hand underneath your chin while you sounded things out? You can do that again with this limerick. So if you put your hand underneath your chin, every time your chin drops down, that's a syllable, okay? So Boggis, Bunce and Bean, one short, one fat, one lean. These horrible crooks, so different in looks, were nonetheless equally mean. So a limerick usually has 8 or 9 syllables in the first line, the second line and the 5th line. And it's got 5 or 6 syllables in the 2 middle lines. So we've got 3 longer lines and 2 shorter lines, and they all make up that nice rhythm. Okay, let's see what else you noticed. So this is all about the rhymes. Did you spot the rhymes in the poems? So lines 1 and 2 and 5 all rhyme, so bean, lean and mean. But there's a different rhyme for line 3 and line 4. So we've got crooks and looks. So 1, 2 and 5 were our long lines. They're also the ones that rhyme. And 3 and 4 are our short lines and they rhyme too. So maybe that was something else you spotted. We're going to have a little look at some more limericks and we're going to go to a YouTube video. You can watch this on YouTube or you can watch it as part of this video as well. And we're going to have a little bit more information about what limericks are and listen to some other limericks as well. Okay, so let's get started. It's a bit silly, this video. I'm sure you'll enjoy it.
It's going to be fun and this is going to be silly because limericks are both fun and silly. But first, what is a limerick? That's a good question. Well, a limerick is a type of poem, a very special type of poem. Limericks are usually very silly poems that are fun to read and to write. Let's look at some other things that makes a limerick a limerick. A limerick is a type of poetry that always has 5 lines. So, if a poem has more than 5 lines or less than 5 lines, you know it's not a limerick because a limerick always has 5 lines. Alright, so let's review. Limericks. Limericks are a type of poetry. Limericks have 5 lines, and limericks are often silly. That's not all, though. You see, limericks have a specific pattern. Just because a poem has 5 lines and sounds silly does not make it a limerick. Limericks have to follow a very special pattern. It's really awesome. Limericks have a rhyming pattern. That's right, a rhyming pattern. Remember, words rhyme when they end with the same sound. So let's look at this specific rhyming pattern that all limericks have. The first line, the second line, and the 5th line all rhyme. That means those lines end with the same sound. Then the third and fourth lines rhyme with a different sound than the other lines. So the first line, second line, and fifth line all rhyme, and the third line and the fourth line have their very own rhyme. So it's almost like a rhyme sandwich, you know? Let's look at an example. Let's look at a very old limerick about a mouse. Here it is. You might recognize it. Hickory dickory dock. The mouse ran up the clock. The clock struck 1, and down he run, hickory dickory dock. Notice this follows the pattern of the limericks, doesn't it? The first, second, and fifth lines rhyme, and the third and fourth lines rhyme. It's a rhyming sandwich. It's a 5-line poem, and it's a little silly. This is a limerick. Limericks weren't really popular until this guy came around. His name was Edward Lear, and he is called the father of limericks. In 1846, Edward Lear published this book, a book called A Book of Nonsense. What an interesting title. It was a book filled with limericks and helped make limericks more popular. People loved reading his limericks. They were incredibly fun and, of course, very silly. Let's look at one of his limericks, a limerick about a bee, written by the father of limericks, Edward Lear. It goes like this. There was an old man in a tree who was horribly bored by a bee. When they said, "Does it buzz?" he replied, "Yes, it does. It's a regular brood of a bee." Notice how it has 5 lines. The first, second, and fifth lines rhyme, and the third and fourth lines rhyme, making a rhyming sandwich, which is the pattern of a limerick, and it is definitely silly. This is a limerick written by Edward Lear, the father of limericks. To review, limericks are a type of poetry. They have 5 lines, and they are often silly. They also follow a specific pattern. The pattern they follow is a rhyming pattern. The first, second, and fifth lines all rhyme, and the third and fourth lines rhyme, making a rhyming sandwich. That's the structure and pattern of a limerick.
Okay, welcome back. I hope you enjoyed that little video and you've seen another couple of little limericks as well. So it's not just Roald Dahl that used them, it was Edward Lear as well. So hopefully you've really understood now that we need that rhyming sandwich, the first, the second and the fifth line rhyming, the third and fourth line being those short little lines, and then rhyming to a little 5-rhyme poem, because what we're going to do now is we are going to write our own limericks. So just like yesterday, I've got you a range of challenges that you can do. They are different. They have different levels of challenge within them. So if you're not feeling quite so confident, there's an easier challenge. If you think, yeah, I'm going to be absolutely super at this, you can have a go at a harder challenge as well. So these are our 3 challenges. So challenge 1 is going to be to use what you know about limericks to rearrange and write out a limerick. So I've given you some limericks, but they're in the wrong order. So you've got to use the rhymes and use the syllables to put them in the right order. Challenge 2 is to have a go at writing your own limerick, but I've given you some of the lines and you've got to work out and make up your own line to go in between. And challenge 3 is to start straight away from scratch on your own and write your own 5-line limericks. Okay, so let's go into a little bit more detail and you can pause the video with whichever challenge you want to do. So if you're not feeling too confident, then this one's the challenge for you, because I've got here is 2 limericks. Here's one. And here's another one. Now both of these limericks are 5 lines. The limericks are correct, they're ready, I've got all the rhyming sandwich there, but unfortunately they're not in the right order. So your challenge today is to write out these 2 limericks in the correct order. So to change the lines round so that you've got 1, 2 and 5 rhyming, 3 and 4 being the shorter lines in the middle and making sure that they rhyme as well. So have a fiddle with the different ways you could do it until it starts to make sense. But remember, they are quite silly poems, so they don't always make sense. Okay, I'm looking for beautiful, joined, neat handwriting when you copy those limericks out, so have a little think before you get started. Okay, so challenge 2, if you fancy having a go at your own limerick, but you're not really sure how to start or how to get going with that, then this one's the challenge for you today. So what I've got for you here are 2 limericks, and I've given you the first line, the third line and the fifth line, and you've got to work out something to go in the second and the fourth, remembering that it's got to rhyme with this first one. So there was a man from Dundee who stupidly fell out of a tree, or who fell and bumped his knee. Yeah, so you've got to write your own line. When asked if it hurt, he flung up some dirt and jumped straight back into the sea. Okay, remembering that they're allowed to be silly, so use the rhyming words to help you, and see if you can make up a couple of silly limericks with these 2 examples that I've given you here. So challenge number 3 is to write your own 5-line limerick, okay? So this is a real challenge, because what I'm getting you to do is do it all by yourself. Now, just in case you're not really sure where to start, I've given you some starting lines here. There once was a boy called Pete. There was a young girl from Peru. There was an old man from Milan. Boggy Spunts and Bean. A clumsy young fellow called Tim. And there once was a silly old fool. Now, these are lines from actual limericks, so you could use one of these and then make up the rest of it. Or if you want something that's a little bit easier, you could use a challenge beforehand. But we are really, really excited to see what you get on with. So, in summary, these are your challenges for today. We want you to have a go at one of them, so you can always rewind the video, go back and look at that example. Remember that in your work packs, you've got all of these help activities as well in the PDF that's attached to today's learning, so you can go and look in there for your help. And we really, really, really want you to use your beautiful joined up handwriting for these. They're only 5 lines, so it's a really good opportunity to get that looking absolutely super. And another thing we're really excited about is we really want you to share them with us. Limericks are great, they're fun, they're silly, and we want to see all of your wonderful ideas and what you've come up with. So make sure that you do email Miss Cunnington and Miss Foster on their email addresses so they can see what you've been up to today. Okay, so pause the video here, rewind it, get your right challenge up and have a little go, and then come back to me once you've finished. Okay, I hope you've had great fun writing your limericks. Remember that you need to go back and have a read through of them. Double check them for me. So have they got 5 lines, no extras? Do they lines 1, 2 and 5 rhyme? Do 3 and 4 rhyme? Have you tested it out? Does it make people laugh? If so, then I think you've probably got yourself a great limerick. And think about what you might do to improve your writing next time. Once you're happy with them, make sure that you ping them through to Miss Foster and Miss Cunnington, because I know they would absolutely love to see these guys. So our final lesson of today is our connected curriculum lesson. So we talked about this yesterday. We're going to be thinking particularly this week about the world. We're looking at different countries. We're looking at how to describe locations of different countries and where things are positioned on a map. We're using that Google Earth. We're going to use atlases and maps to find places. So remembering that you've got the different challenges, so you could be making some top trumps cards about the different World of Wonders. You could be making an information poster about one of the World of Wonders after you've watched a little video, or you could be recreating an interactive word map. So I'm just going to go to your workbook, which is the PDF that's attached to this video, so I can show you exactly what that is in more detail. Okay, so I've just gone over to the PDF that comes on the school website with today's learning. This is in your pack every day this week, and if you want to have a little look at it, it's in there, so go and have a little nose. These are your different activities. On this map, it gives you what the challenge is, it gives you an example so you can see it in action, and you've got lots and lots of instructions about the kind of things that we're looking for. So don't get started on those CC challenges unless you've had a little look in your pack to see what the actual information is about. There's lots and lots of websites like Google Earth and some video clips on there that I'm sure you'll find really useful when you are looking at your different aspects. And make sure, of course, that once you finish your projects that you email those to Miss Cunnington and Miss Foster. I know that they'll be really excited to hear from you. Hope you have a wonderful rest of the day. Enjoy your CC challenges, and we will see you tomorrow for another day of learning. Bye, guys.